The city park was a haven amid the urban chaos, a sprawling patch of green nestled between towering skyscrapers, where the air smelled faintly of earth and freshly cut grass. Children's laughter mingled with the rustling leaves, joggers passed by with rhythmic steps, and couples strolled hand in hand. It was a quiet sanctuary, a place for reflection and escape. On this late afternoon, Simone Jackson walked alone along the winding path. Her strides were steady, measured, exuding a calm that only came from years of discipline. Though her demeanor was relaxed, her senses were alert, a necessity in her line of work. She was off-duty, dressed casually, blending into the crowd with an ease that belied her true identity. Simone was an FBI agent, one of the agency's finest. Years of training had sharpened her instincts and prepared her for moments of danger. But today, she sought nothing more than the peace the park offered. A brief respite from the intense scrutiny and high-stakes decisions her job demanded. As she moved deeper into the park's shaded areas, the distant sounds of the city faded into the background. The sun cast golden hues through the canopy, painting dappled patterns on the paved trail. The tranquility was a balm to her busy mind. But beneath that calm surface, an uneasy tension was about to unravel. At the edge of the park, a police cruiser pulled to a stop. Officer Mark Reynolds stepped out, his face set in a stern expression. He scanned the area, his eyes landing on Simone as she passed by. His gaze lingered too long, suspicion flaring without cause. In his mind, her presence didn't belong here, not because of anything she had done, but because of the color of her skin. Reynolds moved toward her, each step heavy with assumptions and unspoken bias. "Excuse me," he called out, his tone sharp. Simone turned, recognition flickering in her eyes, a potential confrontation unfolding where none should have been. She hoped the situation would de-escalate quickly. She was wrong. Officer Mark Reynolds' boots crunched on the gravel path as he approached Simone Jackson. His eyes narrowed, fixed on her with a mix of suspicion and impatience. The afternoon sun caught the edge of his badge, glinting sharply, but his demeanor was anything but warm or welcoming. "Ma'am," Reynolds said, his voice tight, almost accusatory. "I need to see some identification." Simone remained calm, her hands raised slightly in a peaceful gesture. She pulled her wallet from her jacket pocket and handed over her driver's license. There was no need to reveal her badge just yet. This was, after all, a public park where any citizen should feel safe. Reynolds took the ID, scrutinizing it slowly as if searching for a reason to doubt. The pause stretched, the tension thickening between them. Around them, a few parkgoers noticed the interaction, some slowing down, others pulling out their phones to record, an instinctive reaction to moments that often spiraled into something more troubling. Simone's voice cut through the heavy silence. "Officer, is there a problem? I'm just here enjoying the park." Reynolds shifted his weight, but said nothing. Instead, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area," he muttered. "You fit the description." Simone blinked in disbelief. Suspicious activity? She was just taking a walk, blending in perfectly, careful not to draw attention. Yet here she was, targeted without cause. "I assure you, I'm not a threat," she replied, steady and composed. But Reynolds' eyes flashed with doubt. "Step aside. I need to ask you a few questions." Simone hesitated for a fraction of a second before complying, stepping away from the path center. Her hands remained visible at all times, a clear sign she meant no harm. What happened next would change everything. The tension thickened as Officer Reynolds began his questioning, his tone growing sharper, less patient. He paced around Simone, scrutinizing her every movement with suspicion. Bystanders watched in growing discomfort, some whispering among themselves, others discreetly filming the scene. "Where are you headed?" Reynolds demanded. "Just walking," Simone answered calmly. "I'm off duty, taking some time to clear my mind." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You don't seem like the type who just takes a stroll here. What exactly are you doing in this park?" Simone held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "I have every right to be here, just like anyone else." But Reynolds wasn't listening to reason. His hand rested near his holster, a subtle but unmistakable warning. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, tension rippling through the small gathering. Suddenly, Reynolds lunged forward, grabbing Simone's arm roughly. Shock rippled through the onlookers. Phones clicked, capturing every second. "Let go," Simone demanded, struggling to free herself. The officer tightened his grip, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Stop resisting." Simone's voice stayed steady, but the adrenaline surged. She tried to reason with him. "You're making a mistake." The physical struggle escalated for mere seconds, but in those moments, the gravity of the situation grew. Then, As if time slowed, Simone reached into her jacket and pulled out her FBI badge. Reynolds froze. The realization crashed down like thunder. He hadn't just grabbed any woman in the park. He had assaulted a federal agent. The crowd gasped. The balance of power shifted in an instant. The world seemed to pause as Officer Reynolds stared at the badge in Simone's outstretched hand. The metallic gleam reflected the late afternoon sun, but what struck him most was the weight of authority it represented, a weight he had recklessly challenged moments before. For a split second, shock rendered him speechless. The bravado that had fueled his actions evaporated, replaced by a dawning realization of the grave mistake he'd just made. Around them, the crowd held its collective breath. Phones were still recording, capturing the raw and unfiltered truth of the encounter. Simone's voice cut through the silence, steady and unwavering. "I am an FBI agent. You assaulted a federal officer. Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" The officer's eyes darted nervously, a flush creeping up his neck. He muttered an apology, but the words felt hollow under the piercing gaze of both Simone and the onlookers. Reynolds took a step back, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. I didn't know," he stammered. "I should have treated you with respect," he added quietly, though the damage had already been done. The crowd erupted, not with cheers, but with a somber acknowledgement of the injustice that had unfolded. Simone lowered her badge, her expression resolute. "This is not about me. It's about the countless others who face this kind of treatment every day." Her words echoed through the park, igniting a firestorm that would sweep through the city. The incident was no longer just an isolated event. It had become a symbol of systemic issues demanding urgent attention. And Simone Jackson, the woman the officer had just assaulted, was at the heart of this fight. News of the assault spread rapidly. Within hours, the video captured by bystanders went viral, sparking outrage across social media platforms. People everywhere expressed shock and anger, not only at the officer's behavior, but at the systemic problems it revealed. Community leaders wasted no time organizing rallies and forums, demanding justice for Simone and calling for sweeping reforms in law enforcement practices. The FBI released a statement condemning the assault and pledging full cooperation with the investigation. The police department, facing mounting pressure, placed Officer Reynolds on administrative leave pending a full inquiry. Simone herself became a symbol of resilience and courage. Despite the trauma of the attack, she stepped forward to speak openly about her experience, highlighting the broader issue of racial profiling and police brutality. She reminded the public that the story was bigger than her, a reflection of countless others who suffered in silence. "Justice is not just about one officer or one incident," Simone said in a press conference. "It's about changing the culture that allows this to happen." Her message resonated deeply, galvanizing activists, policymakers, and everyday citizens alike. The city's residents took to the streets, their voices united in calls for accountability and change. And amid the chaos, Simone prepared for the next battle, the fight to ensure that no one else would be assaulted, ignored, or dehumanized simply because of their skin. The investigation into Officer Reynolds' actions unfolded swiftly but with intense scrutiny. Federal and local authorities coordinated to ensure transparency and fairness in the process. Internal Affairs reviewed not only the incident but also Reynolds' history, uncovering prior complaints of excessive force and racial bias that had been dismissed or minimized. The community demanded justice not just for Simone, but for all those who had endured similar treatment. Protests grew larger, peaceful yet insistent, with chants echoing the need for systemic reform. City officials faced mounting pressure to implement policies addressing implicit bias, de-escalation training, and accountability mechanisms. Simone continued her advocacy with quiet strength. She worked alongside civil rights groups to promote awareness and educate both law enforcement and the public. She spoke at town halls, police academies, and community centers, emphasizing the importance of empathy and respect. Behind the scenes, she leaned on her family and colleagues for support, acknowledging the emotional toll of reliving such trauma. Yet, her resolve remained unshaken. She understood that healing required both personal resilience and societal change. The officer's suspension became permanent after a disciplinary hearing. Charges were filed, and a criminal investigation was launched. The case became a focal point for national discussions on policing and race. Simone's experience sparked legislative initiatives aimed at preventing such incidents in the future. Training programs were revised, and civilian oversight boards gained authority. Her story was a catalyst, a reminder that change demands courage, persistence, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. The community's reaction to the incident and the ongoing investigation grew into a powerful movement. Neighborhood organizations, churches, and advocacy groups came together, organizing workshops and forums aimed at fostering dialogue between police and residents. These gatherings were spaces for honest conversations about race, privilege, and justice, topics often avoided in everyday life but crucial for healing. Simone and Marcus, her closest confidant and colleague, became central figures in these efforts. Marcus, a civil rights attorney, worked tirelessly to amplify his mother's message, helping to draft proposals for comprehensive police reform. They advocated for mandatory cultural competency training, body camera use with strict enforcement, and the establishment of independent review boards with real authority. Schools began incorporating lessons on racial equity and the history of policing, inspired by the public dialogue sparked by Simone's experience. Young people, empowered by these conversations, became active participants in community advocacy, hosting youth-led protests and educational campaigns. Media outlets featured stories not only about the incident, but also about the individuals leading change in the city. Simone's calm, dignified presence and unwavering commitment inspired many. She stressed that justice is a continuous process that requires vigilance and community engagement. Though progress was made, challenges remained. Resistance from some police officers and officials underscored the depth of systemic issues. But the movement was no longer a fleeting moment. It was a sustained call for accountability and respect. Simone often reflected on the day in the park, the broken cane, the wrongful assault, and how it became a turning point for an entire city. It was a reminder that courage can turn pain into purpose, and that even in the darkest moments, hope can light the way forward. Months passed, and the city's landscape began to shift. The police department implemented new training protocols focusing on empathy, cultural awareness, and the importance of protecting the rights of vulnerable populations. Regular community meetings created opportunities for residents to voice concerns and collaborate on safety initiatives. Simone and Marcus remained active participants, bridging gaps between law enforcement and the communities they served. The once tense streets of the park where the incident occurred now symbolized potential reconciliation. Evelyn's new cane, carefully crafted by local artisans, became a symbol of resilience displayed proudly at community events. Stories of healing and transformation began to replace those of fear and mistrust. Youth programs flourished, teaching the next generation about justice, equality, and the power of peaceful protest. Though challenges persisted, the city's collective will to change grew stronger. Simone's experience had sparked more than outrage. It had ignited a commitment to create a safer, more inclusive community. A community where respect was the foundation of every interaction, where every person's dignity was honored, and where the echoes of that fateful day in the park served as a lasting call to action. The ripples of change extended beyond local borders. Simone's story was featured in national media outlets, sparking conversations about policing and racial bias across the country. She was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and law enforcement training seminars. Her calm and powerful testimony highlighted the need for systemic reform and the importance of empathy. Lawmakers introduced bills inspired by her experience, aimed at improving police accountability and community relations. Meanwhile, grassroots organizations used her story to educate and mobilize communities nationwide. Social media campaigns encouraged people to share their own experiences and call for change. Simone remained humble but determined, always emphasizing that the fight was bigger than any one person. Her message was clear: real change requires listening, learning, and sustained effort. As the national dialogue evolved, so did policies, slowly but surely, shifting towards justice and equality. And through it all, Simone's experience stood as a beacon, a reminder of the power of resilience and the impact one voice can have. Back home, Simone balanced her demanding career with her newfound role as an advocate. She continued to serve as an FBI agent, carrying out her duties with unwavering professionalism. Yet, every time she walked through the city streets or visited the park where it all happened, she felt the weight of that day. The broken cane was more than a symbol of violence, it was a call to action. Simone's family supported her relentlessly, grounding her amid the whirlwind of media attention and activism. She also made time for quiet moments, reading, meditation, and long walks that helped soothe her mind. Her advocacy extended beyond policing. She engaged with healthcare providers, educators, and community leaders to address broader social inequities. Simone believed deeply in the power of connection and understanding. Through dialogue and education, She hoped to bridge divides and foster empathy. Her story, though born from injustice, became a source of inspiration, a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and a beacon guiding others toward a future where no one would suffer the indignities she endured. Simone's advocacy efforts gained momentum as she joined forces with other community leaders and activists. Together, they organized workshops focused on educating law enforcement about implicit bias and disability rights. These sessions weren't just lectures, they were conversations where officers listened to first-hand accounts from those affected by prejudice. Simone's calm and composed storytelling struck a chord, breaking down barriers of misunderstanding. Meanwhile, neighborhood groups began partnering with the police department to develop community policing models emphasizing respect and accountability. Local schools embraced lessons about diversity, inclusion, and justice, often inviting Simone to speak directly to students. Her presence empowered young people to see themselves as agents of change. At the same time, city officials worked to codify reforms, crafting policies that would prevent similar incidents. Though challenges remained, a culture of awareness and empathy was taking root. Simone often reminded those she spoke to, it's not enough to avoid doing harm. We must actively seek to do good. Her message resonated widely, reminding everyone that justice begins with seeing and valuing each person's humanity. As the years unfolded, Simone's influence extended beyond her city. She testified before state legislatures and national commissions, advocating for laws that would mandate sensitivity and bias training for all law enforcement. Her story became a case study in universities, inspiring courses on ethics, social justice, and criminal justice reform. Media outlets continued to highlight the progress spurred by her courage and persistence. Meanwhile, community partnerships blossomed, fostering ongoing dialogue between police and the neighborhoods they served. Simone remained grounded in her mission, balancing her advocacy with her work at the FBI. Her family's unwavering support continued to be her anchor. She understood that the path to true justice was long and complex, but every step forward was a victory. Her journey illuminated the power of resilience and the possibility of change, and her story stood as a testament to the enduring human spirit committed to justice, dignity, and hope. Within the community, new programs emerged inspired by Simone's experience. Youth leadership initiatives focused on empowering young people to understand their rights and advocate for themselves. Workshops taught conflict resolution and the importance of civic engagement. Police departments began partnering with local organizations to co-create safety plans. The atmosphere between law enforcement and residents gradually softened, built on trust and mutual respect. Simone often spoke at these events, her presence a living reminder of progress born from pain. She emphasized the need for ongoing education and vigilance. Her story helped dismantle stereotypes and encouraged empathy. The city began to heal, its wounds slowly knitting together through shared commitment. The ripple effect reached schools, workplaces, and homes. Her journey was no longer just a personal ordeal, but a community's triumph, a beacon guiding the way toward a more just and compassionate future. As awareness grew, legislation followed. State lawmakers introduced bills requiring comprehensive police reform, inspired by cases like Simone's. Mandatory bias training became standard. Civilian oversight boards gained authority to investigate misconduct. Grant programs funded community-led safety initiatives. Simone played a pivotal role, consulting on policy and training development. Her input ensured reforms addressed real-world challenges faced by marginalized groups. The FBI supported these efforts, integrating new standards into federal law enforcement training. Meanwhile, grassroots movements flourished. Neighbors organized neighborhood watches, cultural festivals, and educational programs. The city's landscape shifted from confrontation to collaboration. Though systemic issues persisted, progress was tangible. Simone and Marcus continued their work, reminding all that justice is a journey, not a destination. Their story inspired countless others to act, speak, and build bridges. And as the city moved forward, it carried the legacy of one woman's courage and the promise of change. The city park where it all began had transformed. Once a quiet place of solace and green shade, it now stood as a symbol, a living monument to change, resilience, and community power. The grass was freshly cut, the benches newly painted, and a small plaque had been installed near the spot where Simone Jackson had been wrongfully assaulted. The plaque bore her name and a simple inscription, "In honor of courage and justice." On a warm spring evening, a crowd gathered beneath the gentle light of lanterns strung through the trees. Families with children, activists holding signs calling for justice, local officials, and law enforcement officers mingled, united by a collective hope. This was more than a celebration. It was a reaffirmation of the city's commitment to progress, a progress born from pain but sustained by courage and determination. Simone stood quietly among them, the weight of the past years settling like a soft cloak over her shoulders. She remembered that fateful day in the park, the sudden tension, the rough grip of a badge wielded without thought, the breaking of her cane that symbolized not only her independence but the fragility of dignity when confronted by prejudice. The moment had been raw, painful, and deeply humiliating, but it had also been the spark that ignited a firestorm of change sweeping through the city and beyond. Her journey since then had been one of transformation, not just personal, but communal. The incident, captured on countless phones and shared widely, had galvanized a movement demanding accountability, transparency, and respect. Laws were rewritten, training programs reformed, and community dialogue sparked a newfound understanding between police and residents. Simone herself had become a beacon, traveling far and wide to share her story, to educate, and to inspire. Tonight, as she looked around at the faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns and city lights, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for those who stood with her, for the voices that joined hers in the chorus calling for justice, and for the resilience of a community determined to heal. Children played nearby, their laughter a hopeful soundtrack against the memories of pain. Young activists exchanged stories of protests and victories. Elders nodded approvingly, remembering the long road it took to reach this point. Even some officers, once skeptics, now stood among the crowd, acknowledging the need for change and pledging their support. Simone stepped forward, the murmurs quieting as she took the small stage set beneath an ancient oak. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. "This place," she began, "reminds us of where we have been and where we must go." She spoke of justice, not as a destination but a journey. A journey marked by setbacks and triumphs, by confrontation and dialogue, by anger and healing. She reminded the crowd that the struggle was far from over. Racial bias, systemic inequities, and the wounds inflicted by fear and ignorance remain challenges to be met with vigilance and courage. But, she continued, we are here tonight because of the change we've already made. Because each voice raised, each hand joined, each step taken toward understanding has built the foundation of a better future. She told stories of young people empowered to stand up for their rights, of officers trained to see beyond stereotypes, of neighborhoods that once feared one another now walking hand in hand. Simone's words resonated deeply, carrying a message of hope tempered by the reality of continued struggle. She urged everyone to remain engaged, to listen, to learn, and to act, not just in moments of crisis, but every day. As the evening wore on, the gathering shared songs, speeches, and moments of silence honoring those who had suffered injustice and those who had fought tirelessly for change. When the final lantern was lit and the last song faded into the night, Simone looked up at the stars, feeling the weight of history and the promise of tomorrow intertwined. The broken cane was no longer just a symbol of pain. It had become a testament to resilience, advocacy, and the unyielding human spirit. And in the hearts of those gathered, a fire burned, steady, bright, and unextinguishable.